we're officially into the month of November, which means it's time to look back at October and see if I'm going to recommend or not recommend the movies that I decided to watch last month. I'm going to be covering both old and new movies, so hey, let me know what you think about any of these in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. It really helps me get to that goal of 250 that we're trying to reach before the end of the year. So, on the 1st of October, we watched Hocus Pocus. We watched it at an outdoor screening with some friends, and I recommend Hocus Pocus. It feels kind of weird recommending all these horror movies that we're going to be talking about because we're now in November, but you know what? You can watch horror movies even when it isn't the month of October. And I think Hocus Pocus, though it is very much a Halloween-y movie, it, I think, plays well enough that you could watch it in another month. The next two movies that I watched on a day with my kids where they were trying to convince me that they could watch scarier movies, but they had these two movies to overcome. Each one of my kids had a different movie that they had stopped watching in the middle of it because they were afraid, and I told them they had to get through these before we would watch any other even kind of scary movies. And so the first one we went back and watched was The Haunted Mansion, starring Eddie Murphy. This movie is not very good, and the third act is very lacking. Pretty much the whole movie is lacking. I was very excited when this movie was coming out back in 2003. I think we were all pretty excited because, we're coming off that high of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies just starting to come out, and Eddie Murphy was a big star. Not as much anymore, especially when it comes to these kind of movies, these family comedies. And The Haunted Mansion is one of my favorite rides at Disneyland, and so I was really excited to get to see this movie, but it just is not very good. Here's hoping that the next version of this that's going to be coming out pretty soon, that's just cast Owen Wilson and everything, is going to be better than this one. My other kid had been afraid of the movie The Mummy, specifically the scarabs going under people's skin. This is the 1999 one, starring Brendan Fraser. And I'll tell you what, this movie is good. This is going to be a very strong recommend from me. What a fun movie. And Brendan Fraser, again, is just bringing crazy energy and is super charismatic and just a pleasure to watch. And the brother also, very good. Jonathan, I think is his name. Just really good. The next movie that I watched was 2018's Halloween, which is a direct sequel to 1978's Halloween. Is this movie perfect? Well, absolutely not, but it is really strong, especially compared to the sequel that came out, which I will be hitting on later in this list. I think a lot of what makes this movie so enjoyable is Jamie Lee Curtis's performance. It's just very strong. You can tell that she cares about it a lot, and she's given it her all. It would be pretty easy to come into a horror movie like this and just not really care about it, but she obviously does care about this character and what it did for her in her career and everything. And then just Michael Myers, again, one of my favorite slashers, so it's fun to see him. And as much as I recommend that movie, even more of a recommendation from me is going to be the next movie I saw, 2007's Trick or Treat with Sam, the little guy with the burlap sack on his head, this anthology movie, which I did mention in my scare scale video back at the beginning of October. Really does, to me, just kind of encapsulate all the feelings that go along with Halloween. And so a big recommendation from me on this one. No Time to Die, which you can watch my full review on my channel, is the next movie that I watched. And this is a very strong recommendation for me. A great way to end Daniel Craig's run as James Bond. Excited to see what's going to come next. Fingers crossed on that period piece James Bond. Let's go back to the 60s. That's what I want to see. Now, probably the biggest surprise for me when it comes to movies that I'd say recommend in the month of October was Boss Baby Family Business. The trailers and posters and everything did not have me sold on this one. I watched the first Boss Baby back when it came out, and it was fine. It was a cute little movie that was obviously aimed at kids, and my kids watched it and they enjoyed it, and it wasn't like trash. And so it's always nice when that's the case. And then comes this one where they're going to be like shrinking down adults into babies again and everything. And so I'm all worried, it's just going to be worse because it's a sequel and everything. And at least for me, this movie was better than the original Boss Baby. Now, is that a super high bar to clear? No. But I do think this one is more fun and like more imaginative, even though you get less of like the baby's secret world. But because of that, you kind of aren't asking as many questions that the movie is not prepared to answer. But the Boss Baby Family Business, for me at least, gets a slight recommendation when you're looking at kids' movies. If you're just like, is it good enough to just watch as an adult? without kids, I'd say you can pass on this one. A movie I think everybody should watch, though, is the next one that I saw, and that is Big Trouble in Little China. The podcast I listened to, Blank Check, with Griffin and David, is going through the filmography of John Carpenter, and just hearing him talk about Big Trouble in Little China reminded me that it had been a long time since I had seen that movie, and that it was time to watch it again. And I was not disappointed in the time that I spent doing so. Super funny. Kurt Russell is just bringing a lot of energy to a performance that's very special. Not something that you see very often, if ever. The idea that our main character, our perspective, is not the person who's actually, who the story belongs to, is the sidekick and is bumbling and an idiot and doesn't really even help in accomplishing anything. All great stuff. If you haven't seen Big Trouble in Little China, it definitely holds up and you should give it a watch. I mean, if you like things that are fun. If you don't like fun things, then maybe just skip it. I was trying to watch some horror movies that I'd never seen before this year, and so I watched Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is his kind of reboot of the Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And in this one, him and the main actress from the original movie and Robert Englund all play themselves, and it's about this nightmare demon that kind of takes over the persona of Freddy Krueger in the real world and everything. And it's very meta, and it shows a lot of these are people who actually make movies. There's cameos from producers and everything too. And it is really good. The kill count's not crazy high or anything, and it does have a child actor in it who is doing his best, but it does kind of take you out a little bit because there's just a lot of screaming that this kid has to do, and whether or not you're convinced that he's actually scared is, I guess, up to you. But overall, I mean, this first time I saw this one, I think people should give it a watch. Recommend. Moved on to another Wes Craven movie with Scream 2. I don't know if it's my favorite of the Scream movies. The first one is almost for sure a better movie, but I kind of think I like Scream 2 more than Scream 1. This kind of kicks up the kills just a little bit. I do like a sequel because you get to just jump into the action without all of the setup. The original has done a lot of the heavy lifting in setting up who these characters are, what their relationships are, and everything. A lot like why I like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 better than Guardians 1. But this movie starts off with a great kill, or a couple kills, that actually rival that opening of the first Scream with Drew Barrymore. If you have stayed away from these sequels, I think that Scream is one of the few series that really kind of keeps the quality up as it goes along. The Scream 3 is a low point for the series, but even there, it's better than a lot of the low points that some of these movies get to. And so next Halloween, maybe put it on your calendar to watch the Scream movies, especially with the new one coming out in January. I told you we'd be talking about Halloween Kills, and here we are. Goodness, I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted on this one. I enjoyed watching it. Do I have good taste, though? I mean, with stuff like this, I don't think so. I like to get what I'm expecting when it comes to these kind of movies. And I was expecting Michael Myers to walk around with an awesome John Carpenter score behind him that I listen to all the time. With my kids, they ask for songs from this score, having no idea what's going on in the movie. But the movie itself is just kind of really mean-spirited, which again is not bad for a horror movie. And there's just a lot in it. It's too long. It's 2 hours long. And it doesn't need to be. You could cut out 20 minutes. And I know exactly what 20 minutes you should be cutting out. The heavy-handed message that it's trying to push confusingly. But my fingers are crossed that the next one, the Halloween Ends, is going to be good. But we will have to wait until next year to see with that. This is going to be, I don't know. If you really like the other Halloween, specifically the one that came out in 2018, I'd say this one is good enough to watch. But I'm going to say probably don't, right, if you weren't really into that one. It's definitely not the one to win you over. One afternoon, we were trying to watch something that was, still kind of Halloween-y, but a little bit different. And so we landed on Spirited Away, and it had been a couple years since I sat down and watched this one. And, man, this movie is just beautiful. The story, the characters, the artwork. I was watching the English dub because I'm pretty, basic like that. But even the English voices in this one, don't take away from it at all. I really love Spirited Away, and I think it's a great introduction to like all those Studio Ghibli movies. And you can feel really cultured watching it, right? Because it's a foreign film. It's won Academy Awards. So, watch it and feel good about yourself. I don't put down every movie that my kids watch around me on my list, because if I did, I would have Frozen on my list like 18 times. But my son did put on Jurassic World, and I did sit down and actually watch it with him. So I wanted to put it here and just say that I think this movie gets too much hate. And in saying that, I'm acknowledging that like the hate comes from like I would feel is like a minority online. This movie doesn't like break any crazy new ground, but the idea of like, taking that kind of original story and that original idea from the Jurassic Park and just kind of blowing it up into this newer, bigger thing, which of course is being like a little hypocritical because it is doing all the things that it's saying like are bad. Let's make this bigger. Let's make this more teeth. Let's do this. And that's just literally what the movie is doing. But all of that being said, I think that the Indominus Rex is cool looking, and I like that it kind of started pushing these movies in a different direction than what the Jurassic Park stuff had been in the past. And so, again, another one I'm excited to see what's going to happen next year with that sequel coming out. I saw Dune, and just like with the James Bond movie that came out this month, you can watch my full review on my YouTube channel as well. I'm very happy that they announced that they're going to be making the second part to it. Definitely needed it. But it's a very strong recommendation on this. I really just appreciate like how genuine this movie is and sincere, and it is nice to get that in a movie every once in a while. Last month, I mentioned watching Dracula 2000 because my wife had thought that it was Queen of the Damned, and so this month we corrected that and watched Queen of the Damned, which if you've never heard of it or have never seen it, it is a sequel to Interview with the Vampire, though from what I understand, the book is very different than what is actually on the screen. This movie is cheesy and a product of its time. The music is definitely going to take you back one way or another, like good or bad. This movie definitely thinks that vampires are cool. And if you don't think that the vampires in this movie are cool, you're going to have, an interesting viewing experience. I definitely think it's at least kind of goofy enough where even if you're not liking it for what it is, it's pretty funny. But if you're coming to it for just like a genuine vampire story, I might say like stay away. Let's give Monster House a recommendation though. A movie about some kids who have a house that is across the street from them that is alive. And it just does all of the things that you would want that story to do, right? The kids go inside of the house and experience the inside of the monster. The house and how monstery it is escalates and changes as the story goes on. And there's even like a little mystery as to what's actually happening. I don't hear people talk about this movie enough, in my opinion, when it comes to kid Halloween movies. So add this one to your list if you are trying to think of, new kid-friendly Halloween movies to watch next year. Or if you're just wanting to watch, a kid-friendly kind of spooky movie at a different point in the year, give Monster House a watch. I made a whole video talking about The Exorcist and how I had never seen it before, and so I did watch that this month. I think it's good. I recommend watching it. You can check out more thoughts on how scary I think it is in my video on the subject. Same thing's going to go for my review of Last Night in Soho, the new Edgar Wright movie. It is a recommendation from me, though, and go see that movie in theaters, which who knows how long it will be there, because I don't think it's really making a ton of money, which is a real shame because it is just visually striking and should be seen on a big screen if possible. And then to finish out the month, I watched a movie exactly the way you should when it comes to the end of the month for Halloween. I was sitting on the ground with a group of people, and unfortunately, though, the movie was not a very good one, in my opinion, with it being The Village. I think I'd seen this movie one time before, and it pretty much played out exactly like I remembered it, and I don't want to spoil The Village right here for you if you haven't seen it, but I just want to share that the people who didn't know what was happening in the movie when the movie was over were sharing with us how upset they were at the end of the movie and how just unhappy they were with how it ended. M. Night Shyamalan is, hit or miss for people, and this one is just not one that hits for me. William Hurt gives a heck of a performance though, so that guy is, he's great. And that's going to finish up all the movies that I watched in the month of October. Hey, what's the best movie you saw this month? Let me know if you saw anything new in theaters or if you're watching some classics at home. Again, thank you to everybody who's been liking and subscribing on the channel. It really does mean a lot and helps us get to that 250. I hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon when we put out another video.